Jonathan Lee Riches, aka JLR. Where is 19-year-old Dylan Rounds? Dylan has been missing since May 28th, 2022. Digging in on James Brenner. I believe 99% believe that James Brenner is the suspect in Dylan's disappearance. The feds currently have him in custody on an unrelated felon in possession of firearms charge. I've been digging deep into James Brenner. I'm going to share one of his criminal cases, the case where he caught his felony. It's from the 1980s, bringing some insight about this James Brenner guy. Check this out. According to public records databases, James Adrian Brenner, 58 years old, he has a charge in 1986. The charges were assault with intent to murder, rape, robbery, malicious injury, repealed, violation of probation. Now I'm going to dig into the actual case in 1986 where he pled guilty to malicious injury, which is a felony. I found a court case in the Circuit Court of Maryland in Prince George's County. Case is under James Adrian Brenner. It was filed in 1986. This is the same James Adrian Brenner who is now currently in custody, charged with being a felon in possession of firearms and possibly being the suspect in the disappearance of 19-year-old Dylan Rounds. This is a case, doesn't give much details, but the charge was malice injury. He did plead guilty. Disposition is guilty. Sounds like he made an appeal. It says criminal appeal. At the time, he had a P.O. box listed as his address, Woodland, Maryland, which is a suburb of Baltimore. It lists here the arresting officers. And then I'm going down the dockets, the court dockets in this case. A lot of them were made in the late 80s. You can't read them. I don't know if they were available or not at the time. I'm going to try to get these records. As you see, a lot of late 80s dates. Seems like he violated probation on this case. But something interesting came up at the end here that I want to share. It jumps from all these 1980s, late 80s filings, and then one jumped in 2011, letter requesting copies forwarded. Response copies forwarded in 2011. But if you scroll down a little bit, in 2021, it looks like July 22nd, 2021, there was some activity on his case. Even though his case is back from the 80s, violation prob held, case closed. Judicial bench warrant recall. So was there a bench warrant issued for him? Bench warrant issued against James Brenner on this case way back, just last year, July of last year, July 22nd, 2021. And then it says violation terminated. But there was like no activity on his case for a long, long time. And then there was a letter in 2011. And then no activity, and then boom, 2021, just last year, there was some activity on his case. This case is an old case, but this is the case where it seems like he is a convicted felon. This is the case that got him as a convicted felon. And then, interesting, in 2011 here, where a letter requesting copies in 2011, that is around the time the feds, he went to federal prison for being a felon in possession of a firearm around 2011, 2012. He was indicted in Nebraska. You can look up that case. James Adrian Brenner, he was indicted in Nebraska, U.S. District Court in Nebraska, served 30-something months, got out a few years later. So this case here is the case where James Adrian Brenner caught his felony conviction, his first felony conviction. It seems like I've been digging through his court records. trying to analyze this guy. Still don't have a mugshot of him yet. I am working on it, so stay tuned for that. James Adrian Brenner, 1986, guilty of malicious injury, felony. Michelle After Dark, she's a good follow. You guys should subscribe to her channel. She put out some information today about an individual that posted in one of her Facebook groups that claims they were at James Brenner's preliminary hearing. He had a court hearing. She read off a video. I'm going to share this same post that she shared, but you definitely have to go check out her video and check out, her videos on this case. Check this out. Asked if there were any state charges, the federal prosecutor said that the grand jury would probably be dealing with it tomorrow. The implication being or soon after, like the next day. So the judge scheduled the preliminary hearing for Friday on the weapons charges. That's the Fed charges. The defense asked about getting a custody hearing, bail hearing, and the judge said they would deal with that Friday. So there is a direct connection to the state and the grand jury, which means it's about Dylan. There is no need of a grand jury on the weapons charges since he's already been charged. I assume the federal charges are to do with him having weapons as a convicted felon, but I haven't read the charging documents. Chase Venstra is having an extradition hearing Thursday. So you saw that. Now I do have a few questions. I do know that James Brenner, as of now, has not been indicted federally for weapons charges, being in felon in possession of a firearm. He's not been indicted for it. There was only a arrest warrant for him, probable cause. He's arrested. Now that case has to go in front of a federal grand jury for a federal grand jury to possibly indict him, unless, his lawyer could possibly work out a deal to plead guilty or plead something to a criminal information to avoid indictment. But James Brenner has not been indicted yet by the feds. So I just want to clarify that a little bit. He also, as you read, what someone is claiming, they were in his court hearing today, and he's having a preliminary hearing on Friday dealing with the Fed stuff. And the state possibly could be doing something with a state grand jury. So I'm going to try to get a little bit more information about that, some clarification. But James Brenner has not been indicted by the feds yet. There's no federal indictment out there for the gun charges. So will he be indicted for that down the line? Yeah, most likely. He can always plead guilty to a criminal information before an indictment. Will that happen? I don't know. Now, going back to the state case, it does seem like the state and the feds are trying to connect the cases in reference to Dylan, being missing. I personally think they have their guy. I think James Brenner is exactly where he belongs, and they are building a case. They're building a case. Now, will a state grand jury indict James Brenner if they don't find the body of Dylan? Possible. Or will a state grand jury, if they impanel one, go on a fact-finding mission? Because there's a couple types of grand juries. There's a grand jury for investigated matters, and there's a grand jury that just basically rubber stamps indictments. And that's usually how it's really done, like 99% of the time. Probable cause, grand jury, the prosecutor goes in there one-sided, and bam, slam dunk, indict. That's why you hear it's really, really easy to indict in ham sandwich, because it literally is. So monitoring this case, I do think that James Brenner is the one, has authorities checked his property. I posted a video yesterday about James Brenner, Adrian Brenner, owning property in Elko County, Nevada. He bought it in 2016. He bought 10 acres. It is the same James Brenner that is in custody. This same James Brenner is originally from North Dakota. He gave one of his apartment addresses as an address to buy this parcel of land. It is right on the border between Nevada and Utah. Literally, the road to get there seems like it's on the Utah side. You would have to get out of your vehicle and then cross over the border onto the Nevada side, and his property's right there. It seems like it's a 50-minute drive from the farm where Dylan went missing, allegedly. So I wonder if authorities are searching that property around James Brenner. I can tell you that Dylan Rounds' father, Justin, he was not aware of that property that James owned. I brought it to his attention. He now knows. He gave the information over to the FBI. I mean, it seems like it's hard to see what that terrain actually looks like. You know, Google Maps is one thing, but it is out there in the middle of nowhere. I've seen a little bit away from that property, some structures, maybe some trailers. I don't know if any residents live around there. It doesn't look like it, but it does look like near his home. On the other side, on the Utah side, it seems like it goes into these valleys and caverns and stuff like that. You know, it's very remote out there. Is Dylan's body out there somewhere near the property owned by James Brenner? And then the question was, why was James Brenner squatting at the home at the Dylan's family farm? But we know that he supposedly worked for Dylan, and maybe he was just, you know, got property there and was just getting a local job and trying to work with people around there. But he does own property. I don't know what James is intent to do with that property that he bought. Did he have a vision to build on it? Did he want to just put a trailer out there, be remote, be away off the grid? James has a criminal past from North Dakota. He does have charges up there, simple assault, DUIs. He has that charge that I just showed you out of Maryland, Prince George's County, Maryland. It looks like that's the case that originally got that felony in 1986. So he's been a felon for since the late 80s. He's been a felon. So he's been a felon for the last 25 years, 25 plus years. You know, originally from Connecticut, lived at Maine at one point. No mugshot of him yet. I am working on it. Anyone out there, please get this guy's mugshot. I want to see what he looks like. 58 years old. What does James Brenner? Why doesn't he have any mugshots out there, you know, publicly? I mean, as a felon, you think a mugshot should be out there. He's a convicted felon with no mugshot out there. Let's get his photo out there. I think his photos out there would be very important for the public to see, because maybe people in the area up there at the time could provide some insight and say, hey, I seen that guy. I don't know why authorities are not releasing this guy's photo to the public, because it could help. It could help. And, you know, federal courts are, you know, he's charged federally right now. They're a little bit more secretive than state cases, the feds, you know. You can't go in there and film and document, and no federal cases you can broadcast live. So I don't know if they're going to seal his case or anything like that down the line. Remains to be seen. But definitely, I think they have their guy. I don't think it's the Wadsworths. I don't think it could be possibly Chase Venstra, you know, involved maybe. But it seems like he's being extradited out of state. So you know, if he's being extradited out of state, you would think if he's involved, they would keep him in the state of Utah. So interesting, digging in on the Dylan Rounds case, looking more into the James Brenner background, history of James Brenner, associates, family members, everybody that had dealings with James Brenner. Who is James Brenner? Subscribe to my channel, hit the notification button. You know, digging in on this case. Hopefully the family of Dylan Rounds, Candace Cooley and Justin Rounds, get justice, get answers. You know, what is justice out there anyway? But hopefully they, you know, find Dylan. Hopefully Dylan is found. Everyone be safe. God bless.